All right, we want to welcome everybody to the Axalta Live Studio for our first episode of Excellence by Design. I'm your host, Titus Cartwright, and as always, we want to thank you folks out there for joining us for this special broadcast of episode 1, where we're going to get into productivity in the shop. But we have a challenge, and Bob Little is going to bring us exactly what that challenge is in the body shop and how we can remedy it if we put these things into play. But like always, everybody that does attend, you have a voice as well. So we want to make sure that you folks, if you have questions, please post them in the chat for us, and then we'll get into a live Q&A with Bob Little from Charlotte, our Customer Experience Center out in Charlotte, after we get our material out there. So again, we want to welcome everybody. Thank you for joining us for the Excellence by Design, episode number 1, where we're going to get into productivity. So how about this? Bob sat down and gave us a little bit of insight on how to be productive in the shop and how we can do it. So we're going to go to that video, and then we're going to come back, and hopefully you folks will have some questions for us in the chat that Bob and I will discuss at the end. So let's get into episode 1 of Excellence by Design.
Hey, thanks, Titus. And thank you for joining me in this new production series. We're going to talk about ways you can improve your productivity in your shop without increasing your stress. You know, there are always some bottlenecks in almost every process. But productivity isn't driven off just speed. Where productivity is increased is when we have nice, even flow. And if the bottleneck is in your spray booth, then this series is for you. Now let's talk about KPIs. Key Performance Indicators. It's a measurement against the industry standard. You know, that would be doing something, taking a measurement, making an adjustment, and trying it again, and see if we actually improved. Now, if a runner wants to improve their speed, they need to measure, implement change, and measure again.
Now, here are several KPIs that a body shop may measure, and they're all important. The ones I want to talk about today is paint labor hours per booth cycle and how many booth cycles per day.
See, what we're trying to do is maximize each spray booth cycle. You know, when that booth is running, it's costing us utilities and wear and tear. But when the booth is also running, we should be making money. You know, we don't want that booth running without anything in it. That helps us maximize that investment. You know, the first thing we have to ask is why? Why would we change the way that we're doing some things? Well, what if it could mean making more profit? Did you know that the average shop only does 3 booth cycles per day with an average of 8 hours of actual paint labor per booth cycle? Now, a booth cycle would include loading the booth, spraying, baking, and unloading. Now, this wouldn't pertain to a shop that has a separate booth for baking parts in and miscellaneous things. But maybe your shop doesn't have a bottleneck in the booth. Well, don't worry, we have an episode coming up just for you as well. Now, what if you could do 2 extra paint hours per booth cycle? So instead of doing 8, you actually did 10. Now, let's take a look and see what it means to the shop and to the painter. Remember, our average booth cycle per day in an average shop is 3 cycles per day. And the average shop has 8 hours per cycle. So with that, we have 24 paint hours that we actually did. Let's assume that your labor rate is $40 an hour. That actually equals $960 in paint labor per day, right? Or you could look at it at a month, and it's $19,200 per month. So let's take the challenge, right? 2 extra hours, 3 cycles per day. We're now at 10 hours per booth cycle, which now we actually did 30 hours. 24 at 8 hours per booth cycle. Now we have 10 hours, so we're at 30. We still have our $40 an hour per paint labor, right? And this now gives us actually $1,200 right per day, or $24,000 for the month. So for the shop, that actually means an additional $4,800 for the month. The painter would turn actually 600 hours instead of the 480 that he previously was doing. So that's an extra 120 extra hours per month. Same spray booth, all that's still the same, but we increased an extra 120 hours just by taking the 2-hour challenge. Now let's talk about how we can do that. It's important when possible as a painter to talk to a repair planner, the person writing the estimate. You know, if we can make our voice heard, that will help a lot. You see, it's important to make sure that we're capturing if that color actually has limited use toners. Is it a 3-stage color? Is it a quad coat color? Do we have all the mirrors and door handles and moldings that need to be painted? Is it a matte finish? Did we get our blend panels? Is it a 2-tone? These are the things that are important to make sure that we get on the repair order. It's important to make sure that we hit that KPI of 9 paint hours on average per repair order. You see, it starts with the end in mind. If you want 10 or 12 hours out of the booth, you know, you have to go upstream and you've got to start looking for 12-hour blocks that you can fit through the booth in one cycle. We have to stop thinking in the number of jobs we're doing or the number of repair orders and start thinking in 10 to 12-hour blocks. If a 6-hour job comes to prep, a good idea would be to look around and find other things that we can put in there to make up the other additional hours that we need to fit that 10 to 12-hour booth cycle. And if you can find colors that are the same, that even makes it easier yet. Planning for level flow is key. 10 to 12-hour blocks in the body shop, in the prep area, in staging. And we'll talk about that next time, but then your 10 to 12 hours in the booth as well. Each 10 to 12-hour block takes roughly about an hour to move to the next stage. Now let's talk about the next how, one touch. You know, one touch is a pretty simple concept. It's not touching parts any more than you absolutely have to. It's painting everything off the car when possible. You gotta ask yourself, does the car really have to go into the spray booth? Maybe there's a blend panel that's on that car and that's the only thing that's on there. Could you maybe take that off, even if it's not even on the repair order? Now you might ask, well, Bob, why would I do that? Well, let me give you just a few different answers and reasons why. Now I wrote some of these down to make sure I wouldn't forget any of them. And the first thing is no edging of parts. Paint them all at one time, inside and out, right? Mix the paint and clear coat one time. It's gonna allow us to clean our guns just one time. No sanding of paint edges later. If I paint a part off, right, I can put it back right on the vehicle and it looks just like an OEM finish. If I jam it, cut it in, right, I may have some tape edges somewhere that I have to come back and get rid of. If we can remove the blend panels, that then also frees up more room in the spray booth for other jobs, which increases our paint labor hour per booth cycle. Less sandpaper is used, very little to no masking when we paint parts off the car, right? And if we can, let's limit our sealer to new E-coat replacement parts. Now here's just another idea. If you have a good prep deck that legally you can spray in, and you can put sealer on some of those E-coated panels before we get everything into the spray booth, that's just another way that we can improve our productivity as well. Now we'll have several pieces of content available for you throughout this series. And this first one here is a poster called Paint Booth Parts Layout. This poster is to help you be able to figure out how to get parts in the booth when painting multiple jobs through the same booth cycle. Well, let's take a look at the poster. If parts that are painted in the same code, in the same booth cycle, these parts should be 1 foot or 30 centimeters apart. For parts with similar colors, 3 feet or 1 meter apart is recommended. Parts that are different colors should be 6 feet or 2 meters apart. Painting should be done in this order: metallic colors first, then your pearl colors, then solid colors, then similar color family, followed by the same color. Now this is simply a guideline. You know, every booth can be different, but a good, maintained, downdraft spray booth, these recommendations should be really close. Now let me ask you a question. How many brand new fenders could you spray in one spray booth cycle? Think about it. Could you do 3, 5, 6? Could you possibly do 10? These are the kind of things that I really challenge you to think about. This will help you get those extra 2 hours per booth cycle. Maybe the parts racks that you have that you're hanging parts on, maybe you could put wheels on them to move them around. Put a coat on, push that one off to the side, put another coat on another fender, push that one off to the side. Make your parts racks movable in the spray booth will help you fit more parts in there and increase your paint labor hours per booth cycle. So next time we'll talk about productivity enhancements and 4 more hows to be more productive. Now let me get back to my office and we'll chat with Titus.
All right, thanks, Bob. Did a great job with breaking down productivity, but there's a couple things that we want to discuss, Bob. So we're going to bring you in live from the CEC. Welcome. Thank you again. You got any comments?
Hey.
Let's talk about it.
Yeah, thanks for having me, and it's a pleasure to be here. I always love doing these things and just taking the information that we have in my 43 years in this industry and just passing it on. So it's a pleasure to be here. Appreciate you having me, Titus.
Absolutely. So, Bob, I know in this first episode we really got into how to increase productivity. You put out there something around a 2-hour challenge. You know, how hard do you think? I mean, there's going to be shops out there that's going to say 2 hours. How am I going to be able to do that? How hard do you think that will be to kind of generate that extra 2 hours in there to get that 10 hours per cycle?
Yeah, Titus, in the beginning, you can sit here and say, yeah, man, 2 hours. How do we do that, right? And the reason that can be challenging is because it's something that's different, right? You know, in this industry, one of the hardest things to do is to change. You know, we're in the habit of doing things a certain way. We've always done it a certain way. And sometimes that's the biggest challenge, is opening your mind, right? And say, okay, let's try something different, right? And see if it will actually work. And that's one of the things that we even specified in there, one of the KPIs. It's like, okay, how do we know if we didn't ever try, right? But measuring something and then looking at the data and say, hey, is this work, right? And then possibly do it, again and again. And, to measure that really, do it over a week long, and then maybe 2 weeks, and then, eventually a month, and really see that impact. That's where it really comes into play. So I think when you first start, it might be a little bit of a challenge, but I'll tell you, the more you do it, the easier it gets. And the shops that are really successful and they churn a lot of hours, and they're sending stuff through the shop, and that painter, that technician is making more money, and all of a sudden it becomes easier to do, right? Because it's having an impact on our take home as well.
Yeah, and I would have to 100% agree with you. Change is something that can be a little bit difficult. So if we're going to put a challenge out there, just letting everybody know, like you just mentioned, it's going to take time. You can't expect that this 2-hour challenge or adding that extra 2 hours is just going to happen just like that. It won't, but if you're consistent with it and put that into practice, as you mentioned, it'll just get easier with time. And not only easier, but actually you're going to make some more money from a painter standpoint.
Oh, yeah.
So excellent point there. There was another piece in there that we talked about, the one touch. That's something that we've been promoting for years and years and years. But a lot of guys are reluctant to do that because what happens if somebody scratches the part? You know, I would love to say like everybody's going to be careful with when they put stuff and reassemble things back together, but it happens, and that's going to be the fight that we have is like, yeah, but Joe the body man, he's like a bull in the china shop. What do we do about that?
That never happens, Titus. Come on, we never paint anything that never gets scratched. I mean, that's just the farce. But yeah, 100%. You know, things are going to happen, and we understand it. I get it, right? And I can remember plenty of times when I was painting cars, you know, every day for a living. I can remember the ones that get scratched, you know, and you, doggone it, I'm going to have to redo this. It happens. It's real. But I will say this. The amount of times that it doesn't happen outweighs the times that it does. And if you have to come back and fix that one periodically, you know, statistics are you are still further ahead. As a painter, I would much rather paint things off the car, right? I don't have to mask as much. I mean, all that stuff becomes easier. I don't have to come back and fix tape edges. And that's very time consuming. Think about how long it takes you to mask something up or come back and fix a tape edge later, as opposed to a painter actually walking over to the body shop and helping that body man hang a fender or maybe help him hang a door or something to where he doesn't scratch it. That is a much faster process than doing all the alternatives, right? You know, edging it in, you know, back taping stuff, taping more things up, coming back and fixing edges. So when you think about it that way, it's dramatically, you know, a faster process. And think about the cost savings when you're not using, you know, as much paper and masking tape and those types of things. So extra cleaning process and spray guns and all these things add up. And, you know, maybe that's one thing that we actually, you know, take a stab at and look at, hey, when we do this outside of just time, what does it save us in material? Because that can probably be a pretty good number that maybe some of us don't really think about. And it's not only that. If you're edging parts in, maybe you're throwing them into a booth that possibly could be eating up good boost cycle time that we could be actually spraying another job. And now you're running through a whole nother bake cycle, trying to get them through there. So there's a lot of reasons why painting parts off the car is a huge advantage. And not to even talk about, you know, how it looks when it's done. It looks OEM. It looks like that car has never been touched before. And those are really ultimately what we're trying to do, right? Give that car back to the customer, you know, the way it came from the factory before the accident ever happened. So I challenge you and encourage you, if you have never tried to paint parts off the car a lot in your shop, and give it a shot. And if you can get wheels on those, you know, parts racks to where you can move things around in the spray booth to minimize overspray, you know, from one color to the next, it only makes it easier.
Yeah, for sure.
Hopefully that makes a lot of sense.
It makes a lot of sense to me, but you know, our audience, the painters that are out there, the ones that are going to really see the benefits of, you know, putting these things into play. And this is, I think, why we came up with this new series from Axalta, this, you know, Excellence by Design, because we know there's certain areas out there that we could help shops improve. And this is just one of many that are to come. We highlighted something else inside the video around painters having a conversation with the writers. You know, how important is that?
Wow. You know, I've been in this business for 43 years, Titus, and this is one of the things that I find very interesting. I can't tell you how many times a body man, right, a body tech, and there's nothing wrong with them. We need them just as much as we need painters. They get involved in, you know, writing the estimate and what's needed all the time. And I can't tell you how many times a car goes to a paint shop, though, and now the painter has to try and figure, okay, well, we didn't get this on the order. We didn't get this on the order. This color is a 3-stage. It's a quad coat. You know, this color actually takes a limited use toner. Oh, and by the way, man, I've never even seen that before, and it's going to take 3 days to get it from our distributor maybe. And all these things still have to be done And now maybe it's even caused you to have to go back now and do a supplement. It slows things down. Maybe it's not a DRP, and now the insurance company wants to come back out and look at it. There's so many things that say, hey, why don't we get, the painter involved in the estimating practice as well, right? Blueprint this thing the right way to where when it goes to the paint shop, we know we have everything on the order already. We know what we're blending, because I can tell you a lot of times when a car's come to me, from a body tech, and I look at this and I'm like, there's no way I'm going to be able to blend this thing and stay within this panel and not feel comfortable with it, right? And not wonder, do I have enough room? Those are the kind of things, if we can put that fire out before it started, man, the throughput through the shop is just so much smoother, right? And that helps us as well when the painter has a little bit of voice in it, right? That helps us hit that target 9 hours per, paint hours per repair, right? And a lot of times I just don't think that we do a really, really good job at that. So all these things add up, right? When everything that we're talking about in this segment, in this series, is going to help you make a little bit more money. And not only that, but be more fluent, right? A lot less hiccups. We're talking about all these things, and we're not saying that you have to work harder, right? We're just saying, hey, let's be a little more proficient at what we're doing and how we do it, right? And that's really, at the end of the day, it makes your life a whole lot easier. But the bottom line now gets a little bit bigger when we can do this. So, yeah, working with the service writers and your estimators, that's a huge thing that I think that we miss a lot of times in the paint shop, unfortunately.
Yeah, and I think too, by working with the writers, they'll also make their job a little easier, because now they don't have to go try to find things, because the painters, they paint every day. The writers write every day. The body men do their body work every day. And sometimes everybody doesn't know what everybody does. But if, they say too many cooks in the kitchen makes a mess. But in this case, I'm thinking too many people on a service writer or something like that may actually help the process even move even smoother from that perspective. And everybody's happy. There's no surprises.
Yeah.
But nice way to put that.
I think it puts everybody on the same page too, right?
Yeah.
And the more that a painter, right, can work with the writers, they start to learn as well, right? A lot of writers in today's business have never picked up a sprig, and they never painted anything. It's different than it was 40 years ago, right? And so I think what happens is the more that a painter can actually work with the writers start to learn, hey, what we can probably do and what we can't do. And maybe they also learn that, hey, this specific color, I know it's a quad coat color. We've done this before. I remember this, right? So there's a lot of things that when we work together, the outcome is always just that much better. Yeah, for sure.
Excellent. So let's think about this, because the question came up around, when we're redesigning body shops and getting things set up, what could we give the shop as, this is a non-negotiable. Like, we need to do this, or we need to adopt this process to make sure that everything is moving very fluidly in the shop. What would be that non-negotiable that you would say, in your personal opinion, Bob?
Oh, man. There's
if there's more than one, go ahead.
I know. There's a lot of them, right? But, there's one thing that I've been in this business a long time, and if there's one thing that I would say that is vitally important to make sure, that the things are going through the shop and they're going through the shop seamlessly, and that's teamwork. I think that's one of the biggest things that I see in this business is it seems like there's always this battle between this department and that department and the front office and the insurance companies. I mean, it just seems like there's always these battles going on. And I think that when everybody can work as a team, right, the outcome is just that much better. We're always going to have a hiccup here and there, right? Whether it's in a body shop, whether it's in a paint shop, a front office, where somebody maybe, oh man, I missed it on the order, we'll make it up next time, or whatever it might be. But I truly think that the the shops that perform the best, they work the best as a team. And I don't think you can replace that. It's a hard thing to get everybody there, but the shops that actually work together as a team, right, and put their differences aside, we're all going to have a bad day now and then. We all get it. But man, those are the ones that excel. Those are the ones that succeed, and they do a very, very good job. And I know a lot of them. But I also know a lot of shops that don't look at things that way and hold each other accountable. And yeah, they're in their little bit of disarray. So I think working as a team, right, in every aspect of the shop is what really makes you and helps you be successful.
Good. And I would agree with teamwork 100%. In order for teamwork to work well, communication.
Yeah.
So I think they go hand in hand. If folks are communicating with each other from one department to the next, from start to finish, that is going to work every time. Teamwork is always going to be there, and that will be a non-negotiable. I know there's others out there. So if you folks that are attending kind of think about, what will be that non-negotiable for you and your shop. We gave you what we think, but you guys are living it. You're in the shop. You see things every day. What would it be? Would it be teamwork? Would it be communication? Would it be the parts person that just, whatever it is, you guys know. We're, again, just going to give you some ideas, some things to kick around. Because at the end of the day, productivity is top of the order for this first Excellence by Designs series. Another thing, just kind of, we'll wait for some more questions to come in, Bob, that we discussed or got into a little bit in the video was around, staging, parts. How important is really staging and kind of looking at the cycle and what could go into the booth at each time it's running. What do you think about that?
Yeah, no, we have the next segment in this series, we're gonna talk about staging and why it's important. But since you're asking the question, staging is probably something that I would say is probably overlooked in most shops, to be honest with you. Right? We always, you might look at the hours on an order, or hey, what's coming next, or what. We all might do that a little bit, but I don't think that there's a lot of shops that actually will stage things. And what we mean by that is a footprint outside of the spray booth that lines exactly where your parts need to fit in there, and stage them to an area to where, yep, I can fit these in there, right? Or I can't fit these in there, one way or the other. So it's important to make sure, that we can do this and make sure that we can fit everything in there. And it just helps us be fluent, right? There's nothing worse than you get ready to go into a booth and then you realize that, man, this is really tight in here. I don't know if this is going to work, right? And maybe we could have thought a little bit different had we have pre-staged it. So I think when you can pre-stage stuff, it just helps that process of going in the booth, going through the booth, and coming back out is a faster process, because we want to get in that booth when it's down, that job got done. We want to be able to get that stuff out of the booth, get in there with the next one, and not having to wonder if it's going to fit or how we're going to make this work, right? And when we can do that, it's key. And we're going to break some of that down in the next segment in this series. So I encourage you, right, keep an eye out for the next segment that we're going to cover, and some of that staging is actually in that series there in that segment. So good question, though, and it's just a little teaser, I guess.
Yeah,
that's
what it is. That's I kind of lobbied it up there for you, see what you were going to do with it. But that was a nice segue for our next episode 2 in this Excellence by Design series. One of the things that came up too on the question board around the non-negotiables for some of our folks that are attending is around the right stands, how they're setting things up. That's important to them. When you think about staging things and getting things in the booth, if you got stands that are, let's just say, they're not in the best working order, wheels are broke, and you're sliding and dragging, it could be difficult. Where's the productivity around that? What do you think, Bob?
Yeah, it can be difficult. Man, when I got out of painting, for a full-time living, it's 24 years ago now, and we didn't have the technology and the racks, that we have today. These racks today, they're unbelievable. They are awesome. And when you can sit there and hook a hood on there, or fenders and doors, and paint the insides and the outsides all at one time. And the reason we do that is to help us with the one touch, right? But the racks that are out there today, are they expensive? They can be. But I would probably, I don't like arguing, but I would say that you could probably pay for them racks in a very short amount of time doing one touch, because it just makes it so much faster and easier. And if you can find racks that actually have wheels on the bottom of them, and it allows you to, the question I asked in there, I'm going to go back to that. Could you paint 10 fenders in there? If you had, racks with wheels on there, you probably can, because you can paint, put a coat on something and push it out of the way to give you that extra space so you don't get overspray on, on an adjacent panel. You can move stuff around in there. The other ones, if you don't have wheels on them, then we can actually get the ones that actually have, they're kind of like a ski on the bottom, so you can drag them across the grates a little bit easier. But there's so many different racks that are out there that just make our life so much easier and much more production, run through spray booths and through the paint shop. And there's so many things out there that help us be productive today. And it's, it's funny is when I ask, shop owners or managers or production managers, hey, where's your backlog in your shop? If you had to tell me where your biggest backlog is, where is it? And for whatever reason, I always get, the paint shop's always backed up, and these are the kind of things that we're bringing, to the forefront and say, hey, well, and it's not in every case, but there's a lot of times that's what it is, right? And we're bringing this to the forefront and say, okay, if what we're doing is causing us to be backed up, then why don't we think outside the box and maybe try and change something, right? And these are just some of the things that we're talking about in this series. These are the things that can help you change and get over the hill, right? Get over the mountain, right? To where we can, sometimes we get right to that plateau and we're like, man, I just can't get anymore. I can't do anymore, right? And everybody always thinks like, I got to add on to the shop and all these things that, man, a lot of times we can do a better job and efficiency in the way that we're doing things. And maybe we can stay in the same square foot and not have to add on to the shop or not have to put a second spray booth in. So, these are the kind of things, just thinking outside the box a little bit and giving something a try, right? That can a lot of times make the improvement that you were actually looking for. But if we don't try, we'll never know.
Exactly. And I think that's what it is. Giving it a shot, kind of taking these reminders, let's just say, these best practice things that we have. We see a lot of shops. I mean, we see customers constantly. Yeah. Bob, you guys see a ton of people from all over at the CEC. Same here in Lineville and all of our other training centers. So we get a lot of feedback from the customers that help us develop these programs that help them get over the hump. Because that, like you said, they get to the top and they're like, I just don't know what else I could do. Well, maybe try this. And that's the biggest thing is try. And when you put that effort out, you're going to see in the end, where you guys benefit. Some of the things that came up, Bob, while you were kind of giving that breakdown of things and laying out, was someone said, hey, what about laying out an area outside the booth that kind of gives you an idea of what you can fit in the booth? Now, this is all kind of probably going to be in episode 2. Don't want to give it all away.
It is.
But
that's what we call a staging area, right? That's what we call a staging area. So you see the outline. Now, I will say this, and I'm gonna do a spoiler alert, right? Because this is in my next video segment. If you can, don't do it in front of the booth, right? Because if you have a booth that you can only go in and out one way, that means you stage that. You're gonna have to move it out of the way to get the next car, the car out of there. To put it all back in there. So if you can, find an area, maybe like in your prep area, that you can stage it to where you don't have to move it, multiple times. But that's just a little tidbit for you. But yes, taping them out on the floor, 100% agree. that is what we should be doing.
For sure.
Yep.
Excellent, excellent. All right.
So,
Go ahead.
100,000 points for whoever made the comment on there. We're going to give that guy some points because he's thinking. That's the key.
That's what we want. We want thinkers. We want guys that are going to
Yep.
really want to make the difference. Take your challenge on. 2 hours.
Yep.
Doesn't seem like a big deal, but again, you take that 2-hour challenge, put it into play, it ends up turning into dollars and cents for both the shop
Yep.
and the painter, if we're talking about a flat rate painter. So everybody's going to win in that case, but it does take some effort. So, Bob, I don't want to hold you up too much longer. So if you have any closing remarks before we close out this first episode of Excellent by Design, the floor is yours.
Just real quick. You just talked about the 2-hour challenge, right? And we talked about in 8 hours, right? That's the typical shop. They do 8 hours of paint labor per booth cycle. And our challenge today was to say, see if you can do 10. But here's the other thing, right? Let's say that you're already doing 10. Maybe you're doing 11 or 12. I still challenge you. Try and do an extra 2 hours on average of where you're currently at today. So this week, right? Or maybe even starting next week, measure what your average is going through your shop, through your booth, right? And the following week, right? See if you can challenge yourself to squeeze an extra 2 hours in there, because that's where we make the big impact. So I hope you found this to be informational. It was good to see everybody here, and don't miss the next one, because we're going to bring some more of these things to you. And the next one's a little bit different than this one. We'll talk a little bit more on staging and different things. But I appreciate you letting me hang out with you today, Titus, and everybody that's on the call. Love seeing you again, and I look forward to seeing you next month as well. Titus,
All right,
back to you, buddy.
Yeah, excellent. Thanks, Bob. You and your team over there at the CEC for putting things together as far as content. We really appreciate that. Couldn't do it without you. And again, everybody that attended this first episode of Excellence by Design with Axalta, I want to thank you. Great questions, great comments that came in across the board. But as Bob alluded to, stay tuned, because episode 2 is going to be even better. And we hope, let everybody know. If they didn't join this time, let them know, hey, these guys got something going with that Excellence by Design series. And until then, from the Axalta Live studio, I'm your host, Titus Cartwright. We'll see you next time. Have a great one.